Hi, my name is Francesca Regeter, but you can call me Fran. I'm the founder and president of Inspiring My Generation. We are a 501c3 for mental health awareness, early symptom detection, suicide prevention, and emotional support. This started as a blog when I was 12. I might not look much older than 12 now, but that was 11 years ago. 11 years ago, I was struggling so hard. I had been struggling with anxiety, depression, eating disorders from the age of 5. I had this giant fear inside of me of not being good enough. Has anyone ever felt that way? It's my biggest fear to this day is not being good enough. And that manifested in some of the scariest ways in my life. By the time I was 12, I wasn't sure how long I was going to live, but while I was here, I wanted to help someone. I wanted to do something to make a difference. So I started a blog about different things, ways for me to really share my emotions, what I was feeling, what I was going through, what I was learning. So topics started as saying what you mean, not just to others, but to yourself. Paying attention to who you hang out with, making time for your family and for your friends, not making your whole life school, but not putting school to the side either, finding that balance. As I got older, I turned it into a podcast. And the reason why is, at 12 years old, 11 years ago, blogging was not a thing. And when a kid does something out of the norm, something completely different, they are bullied endlessly and teased. Anyone ever been bullied or teased by someone? No matter how old we are, it happens to us. But I decided, maybe you're just not hearing me. Maybe you're not listening, so I'm going to speak it now. So I started a podcast, again called Inspiring My Generation. And as I was a little older, I was 15 now, my topics changed. Not to curse all the time. Pay attention to what you're saying and how you're saying it. How about driving safely? How about preparing for your future? Because they don't really teach us that. They tell us, get good grades, get into a good college, and your life will be set up. But what does that mean? How do you prepare? So my topics matured as I did. But my senior year of high school, my parents split up. And that was a very tough time for me because that was my secure base, my security. Anyone ever gone through a divorce or have divorced parents? It is tough. My parents were my best friends in the world right now. My dad's here. But back then, they tore each other apart. They were so focused on winning a divorce, they forgot about the emotional support my brother and I were going to need. They forgot about how divorce also affects the kids. It's not just the parents. And of course, that is something that's so common because when you're going through it, when you're dealing with heartbreak, you tend to forget. My grandparents and my aunt and uncle really stood up and took that stand for the emotional support that I needed. They were there when I desperately needed it. My grandfather in particular. Now, I went away to college, and as someone who has a deep fear of not being good enough, I had to be better than everyone around me. So I heard someone graduated college in 3 years, so I was going to do it in 2.5, which I did. Not easy. I did not take time to take care of myself. Anyone else feel like they struggle to make time for themselves? It is hard, especially when you're putting so much extra pressure and stress that doesn't need to be on you. Well, my grandfather made sure to call me every morning for a cup of coffee. We FaceTimed. He actually went and got an iPhone so he could FaceTime me. Before then, he had that little flip phone. So he made sure to FaceTime me for a cup of coffee. Every day after class while I walked home to my dorm, and he let me tell him all about it. How I hated that class, or how exciting it was. Oh my goodness, when I came out of my management class, that was like the most exciting class in the world to me. I was like, I get this. I've spent so much time listening to my father talk about business. I got this, I know what I'm doing. I was so confident, and I loved sharing that with him. And every night for dinner. Every night, no matter who he was with or where he was, he could be out at a restaurant surrounded by his friends. He could just be having dinner at home with my grandmother. He made sure to FaceTime me, show me what they were eating, show me who they were with. He always made sure that I felt like I was important, that I was worthy, and that I was enough. So I was beyond grateful to have him, and he really helped me get through those 2.5 years. 3 weeks before I was going to graduate, he ended up getting killed in a car accident. The person I credited with giving me that strength that I needed to get through the hardest times in my life suddenly wasn't here, and my whole world shattered. It fell apart. I ended up coming home that week before the week of my exams, and I was so lucky. My teachers were so amazing and let me miss the final presentation in one exam, and I actually took one from a hospital room next to my grandmother because I slept in the chair next to her for 10 days, helping her learn to walk again, helping her eat because she had broken 8 ribs. She had broken her wrist, she had broken her collarbone, she had broken almost every bone, and I had to be there for her. But I never took time to care for myself. I never took a minute to grieve. So Christmas comes around a month later, and suddenly this holiday where my grandparents and I stayed up all night, cooking and setting the table and getting everything prepared, suddenly that wasn't going to be a thing. I attempted suicide Christmas Eve. My uncle was the one who supported me through it, who talked to me about mental health, about medication, about supplements, about everything, just in a normal way, a normal mental health conversation. That never happens, and he gave that to me. He promised we were going to get through this together. 27 days later, I lost him to suicide, and my whole heart shattered. He understood. He wasn't just listening to me and talking to me. He got it, but he was also afraid to speak about it. And I felt so guilty that I didn't notice he was struggling, that I wasn't there for him the way he was for me. So I withdrew from my master's program at the time for 6 months and moved in with my aunt and little cousins and did everything I could to be there for them, to provide that support that I knew they needed. But again, I never took care of myself. I hadn't grieved for my grandfather. Now I had to grieve for my uncle, and I was losing myself. I had no idea who I was anymore, and I ended up attempting suicide 2 more times, hospitalized in a psych ward where I saw how many other people were struggling. How many people who felt just like me, that they were all alone, that no one understood. And yet we're all together, and yet we still felt broken and so lonely. I made a point to learn everyone's name and everyone's story, why they were there. I noticed that not one other person had a guest. I had 10 visitors, my whole family showed up. No one else on my floor, 40 people, had anyone. And that's the moment I knew that Inspiring My Generation was meant to be more than a blog. It was meant to be more than a podcast. It was going to be a full nonprofit. So we launched March 13th, 2020 on my uncle's birthday in honor of him. And since then, we've launched 3 amazing initiatives. First, our Normalize the Conversation podcast series. I bring on advocates, professionals, anyone who wants to share their story in hopes of amplifying the voices of everyone, providing those resources and information that everyone desperately needs to know, but just doesn't have access to because we don't talk about it enough. The encouragement cards, which I hope you guys take a chance to make today, because those cards provide that support, that love, that reminder that you genuinely are not alone in this. And those go to patients hospitalized in behavioral health facilities. We do 3 every month, and we add on 2 as often as we can. And lastly, we have our workbook series. Every year I come out with a new workbook. The first one is called You Are Not Alone. That was last year, and it's about learning how to cope with your emotions. And that is one of our giveaway items today. And our second one that comes out this year in May is called I Am, and it's about learning how to advocate for yourself. Thank you so much for listening to me today.